Hello?
We're on to Cincinnati.
You play to win the game.
It was all that Dan Marino's fault. Everyone knows that.
When it's too tough for them, it's just right for us.
Covering the New England Patriots, Miami Dolphins, New York Jets, and the Buffalo Bills.
180! 180!
Kyle Smith.
What kind of defense is it? Because they're disguising their coverage as late. Julio Jones, Chris Hogan, identical stat line.
Gary Smith.
Percy Harvin threw a dumbbell at him, kind of weird. Kyle, please, my butt.
AFC East Bros Podcast.
Yes, yet another episode, AFC East Bros, Kyle and Gary. And today we're joined by none other than the great Matt Waldman, producer, creator of the RSP Rookie Scouting Portfolio, which I just recently purchased for my first time. And man, oh man, is it impressive. I've only begun to scratch the surface with it. Matt, why don't you tell us a little bit about the Rookie Scouting Portfolio? You've been doing it since 2006, is it?
Yeah, that's right. So, it's part product of a deranged mind, I think, probably more than anything. But really what it is it's a draft guide that is geared towards fantasy owners and draft nicks for skill positions: quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end. And what I do that makes it unique compared to other draft guides that are out there is that I have two parts for it. The first part is kind of a 400-page draft guide that has rankings that are split apart in a variety of ways, but it takes you through my process. So I grade players by different categories of skills to their position. So for like a quarterback, I'll look at things like different levels of accuracy, different types of accuracy, pocket presence, decision-making, footwork, things like that, and I'll grade all of them across in a tiered level. Then I also do profiles that you get to read about, a little bit more of what I saw and summarized from a play-by-play scenario. You get your easy-to-digest rankings on a spreadsheet, and then you get an overview of each draft class based on their position. In addition to that, I show you all my work. And all my work means is that you also get 1,100 pages of play-by-play info. You get a full glossary that defines everything that I grade to the letter and how my process works so that you can see why my grading system is the way it is, how the grading system works, and then even the checklist grading system that I have, and then the play-by-play notes that I take. So I do that because when I started 12 years ago, I'm not a former NFL player, not a former NFL coach or scout. But I was someone that studied quality processes, and I was in management, operations management for a while. And I learned about really how to evaluate performance in that range. I got certified to do a lot of that, and I took a lot of that process that I developed for the company that I worked for many years and geared that towards studying football and to also help people learn more about the game and to develop a process that would grow. And over those past years, that's what's happened. I have people who work in the league who buy my book. I have scouts that I talk to on a regular basis now because they've been buying my book. And I've done a little bit of side work for a couple of organizations over the past 12 years as a result of doing the work that I do. The process has been really helpful in that regard. And I sell this to people every April 1st, and then it comes with a second publication that comes out in May, a week after the draft, that's geared more towards fantasy owners and about how those players fit. So the pre-draft guide I just mentioned is more about talent. The post-draft is more about fit. And I think that those are two really good things to discuss when you're talking about prospects in general, because we often conflate the two, and it winds up people go, well, you had this guy ranked here. And you think, well, if he had fit over in this place, it might be a better situation.
Yeah, and you had mentioned like that you're not a huge fan of the whole ranking system, and you really need to bring context in. You were saying like Sean Jackson is a completely different player from, say, Brandon Marshall. So, use like, and you were talking about, especially when you're talking about linear rankings, like ranking them in like a certain number order. However, it is, you would say, probably better to rank them in tiers, as you said, right? Like he can reach this certain, skill level potential, or, he's this much above, but it's kind of hard to, rank them in like a certain order because, again, fit. How does a person apply to an offense? How is this guy going to fit into a certain offense? And like I said, I've really just scratched the surface with it. And I want to, if you don't mind, pull maybe part of it up on the screen.
Sure.
Which, by the way, we also, for those that are looking on YouTube, you want to get a little teensy preview of the book. And this thing's got just so much. Go to our YouTube page and check this out. And, if I'm understanding this correctly, when I got a little moment to breathe at work yesterday, I was going through it. And, I'm being a Jets fan, we haven't had a quarterback in God knows how long. So I'm always trying to solve the quarterback. And I've watched every single piece that you put out on any of these quarterbacks this year. And, the first thing that I naturally went to look at was your quarterback rankings and stuff. And, you've broken down like what they do in certain categories: opposite hash accuracy, off platform accuracy, pocket mobile accuracy, drops, I guess, like how catchable their balls are. And you broke them.
Footwork. Yeah. Footwork.
And you broke them down into like, okay, this guy, he's with this certain trait, he's got star caliber, potential. He's got starter caliber potential. This guy, he's pretty bad at it. He's free agent potential. It's not a strong area of his. But it's not just that too. It's also like you have defined as like this could be an easy fix. This could be a difficult fix. He has a high ceiling that he can improve on. It's really, really meticulous work. You want to explain a little bit more about that? Is there something I'm missing there?
Sure. And I think that why I show people this particular section here is that I have two different types of rankings that I use, or two different types of scores. One's a breadth of talent score, which really is showing you all the things that he can do. Like any team would reasonably ask a quarterback to do, here are the skill sets. Like if they were to give say, here are the skills and qualifications we're looking for a quarterback. Now, what New England is looking for from a quarterback is different from what Seattle's looking for from a quarterback. So, for instance, you take
Patrick
Tom
Mahomes and put him in New England system.
Yeah, or you put Tom Brady and ask him to do what Russell Wilson's doing, and he's going to fail. As great as Tom Brady is, he's not going to run around and make plays. But if you take Russell Wilson and put him in New England, he'd probably succeed. Would he succeed as much as Tom Brady? Does it make him a better quarterback? Not necessarily. But it's one of those deals where breadth of talent shows you all the qualifications that could happen for the job. This is depth of talent. Depth of talent is what they potentially could become with development, showing how high their ceiling is and and also giving you a little bit of how high their floor is as well. And so what I'm showing you here is my scoring process for depth of talent for quarterbacks. These are each of the categories, and in each of the tiers, you see the numbers down at the bottom, and that's the score. Those are the point values that I'm awarding for each of those tiers, and they all add up to 100, so that you're scoring these players on a very intuitive 100-point scale.
And it's interesting. Like my next question was going to be, because my first, quick look through, I didn't notice the numbers down at the bottom. Or if I did notice them, I didn't, kind of question myself, what do those mean? And there are certain traits that I guess, weigh more on that 100-point scale. I guess you have, from looking at this, release and delivery is a more important trait than, I guess, how catchable their ball is. Right?
Yeah, or for this, drops are actually like dropbacks, so footwork, foot space
gotcha.
setups. So what you're looking at here is it's interesting about how you value it, because it's not necessarily how it's more important, but it may be what's easier to learn. What are things that you would expect them to learn? What are going to be more difficult things to learn in the NFL? What are things that you have to have down at this level of college football before you move on? And what are things that you can expect them to have to develop a little bit better? So you may find that, certain areas are maybe a little bit more important than others. And that's part of it, but also part of it is, about the transition and how easy that transition may be. The weighted value may be a little bit less if it's an easier transition.
One thing that really stood out to me is I was reading your piece about pocket presence, and you had mentioned how, you have so much data. I mean, you've been doing this for 10 plus years now, and you've never really found any of these guys that hasn't had good pocket presence coming out. They've really never had really long-term sustained success in the league. And you said something to the effect that like it's almost going to be like a deal breaker for you. Like if you don't have good pocket presence, you're not going to be a quality starter in the NFL.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. And pocket presence is one of those things, like part of it's technical skill, part of it's fortitude. It's like boxing. I think we're all been boxing fans at one time or another. And there are some guys that once they've been through enough wars and they've been hit a number of times, they may have had a chin. They may have been tough and been willing to fight back. But if they've been through a couple of wars and been on the bad side of that kind of fortitude and courage can be gone. And with pocket presence, it's very similar. Now, I'll make this argument, and I think Gary may agree or disagree with me about this as a Bills fan. But Trent Edwards, when he was at Stanford, Trent Edwards had pocket presence, and he was tough, and he could take a shot, and he played with an offensive line that often was fighting each other rather than protecting the quarterback while he was getting nailed. And he looked good early on in his career. He looked promising. He had a lot of promising moments and he strung together some games. And after that hit he took against the Cardinals, he wasn't the same player. And it's kind of like when you have it's like getting your hand closed on a window closing on your hand. If that happens enough times, you put your hand in that window, you're going to get conditioned to that response where you're going to jerk that hand away the minute you see a windowsill, even if you're not anywhere near it. And I think that's what happens to quarterbacks sometimes with pocket presence is you can have it entering the league and you can lose it.
Yeah. Matt, it's funny. I always make that reference on this show about I usually use the MMA reference that, Chuck Liddell, he had a great chin when he first started fighting. And, the lights can turn off, and it wasn't by choice. Now, what we're talking about is being gun shy, and the Trent Edwards reference is spot on. He was a different quarterback after that hit that I believe it was Wilson that laid on the safety. Adrian Wilson. It was a safety blitz, and he was never the same player. He was gun shy. And you know what's the funny thing about that, Matt, is that some quarterbacks, they could snap out of it within the next game. Like Tom Brady, you look at the Denver game when DeMarcus Ware and Von Miller were coming after him, and he was dropping early before they even touched him. But fast forward to the season later, he kind of shrugs it off his shoulders. But I tell you right now, that's the elite quarterbacks. 85% of the quarterbacks that enter the league that get constantly knocked down, and there's tough ones that Eli Manning, David Carr. But sometimes there's those gun-shy quarterbacks, like you mentioned, Trent Edwards, that look promising, and then all of a sudden that thing in the back of their mind tells me, oh, I'm about to get hit, and they drop to the canvas even earlier, or they just make bonehead decisions. You're spot on about that, Matt.
Yeah. And I appreciate it. And one of the things I'll just mention with that is that Peyton Manning did it all the time. But he knew it was more of like, look, everyone knows I'm not going to run, and I've got a bad neck, and let me just drop to the ground and save myself for another play, and that's okay. And part of that is the development, having enough development time. Matt Ryan does it occasionally. I'm down here in Atlanta. I watch him on a regular basis, and he still does it frequently. Very good quarterback. But you have to have a level of development time that allows it to be a conscious choice rather than an unconscious reaction. And if you don't get that support early on in your career, you basically, your brain gets fried, and your ability to be a quarterback and sense and handle pressure becomes an issue. And that's a question that it's going to be interesting to see, like Jimmy Garoppolo, if he ends up somewhere else, whether or not that's an issue for him, because he failed my evaluation in that area. And it was something that, I thought he had issues where he kind of saw ghosts a little bit when he was in college. So we'll see if he goes to a different system with different surrounding talent, if that's gone away and he's had enough, lead time with the Patriots where it's been a positive enough environment that it isn't an issue.
Yeah. It's going to be fascinating to see. Again, that's the rookie scouting portfolio. You can get it on Matt's website. Matt, your website, is it mattwaldman.com or is it mattwaldmanrsp.com? What's the exact website?
Yeah, the exact website where you can find my work is mattwaldmanrsp.com. And then the order site is a little different because I'm using WordPress. I've been doing that for the past 12 years. So mattwaldman.com is where you can buy the book. And then this is the actual blog where you can find all my work. And of course, if you click on that first one on your left, that one's going to that'll give you links to get to that Matt Waldman site, but this will give you a little bit more an idea about the book and what people have to say about it. I give you a video tour of the RSP or past editions, so you can kind of look at that first before you make your decision. But you'll be shocked. I know that sounds very nonchalant, kind of braggart to say it like that. But if you look at my timeline on Twitter, if you go to Twitter, you'll also first-year buyers who are like, I heard this was good, but I'm surprised at what's really in here. And I get it year after year. It's one of the things I'm very proud of, because I try to make this something that I under-promise and over-deliver, and that tends to be the case with this.
Yeah, I must admit, I don't know if you had retweeted someone who said something like that, or if it was just, because I follow so many people and, I have a lot of Twitter lists and stuff, and I see a lot of stuff. And somebody had popped up in my mentions saying like, hey, wow, I purchased Matt Waldman's book for the first time. And a lot of people know about you. Sometimes people hear about you and your work for years, and sometimes it'll be 3-4 years down the road. And let me just finally give this guy a shot. And the person was like, and I finally bought it for the first time, and man, is it good. And I already knew that we were having you on the show in a couple of weeks. I was like, I can't wait to I actually go through it. And like I said, I've only done like a surface level dive, but I've walked away impressed already. So I can't recommend it enough. And Matt, it's not just the content that you're putting out, but you're also giving back. Can you explain a little bit how you give back from the percentage that you get from this?
Sure. I don't know how long it's been since the Penn State scandal, but since that time, I decided that with every sale, 10% of every sale would go to Darkness to Light, which is an organization. It's a nonprofit that educates people about how to protect children and communities from sexual abuse, and also how to address that issue when it does occur in the community. Because as we saw, as football fans, one of the things that was really damaging that we saw with the Penn State scandal was how the administration handled it. How the communities first looked at it, and the outrage and some of the things that happened that was even more damaging to the victims in their attempt to try and, do the right thing, but not necessarily know how to do that. So this organization actually trains civic organizations, communities, schools, fire departments, police, teachers, elementary schools, you name it, individuals as well, on the dynamics of sexual abuse and how to approach that. And I've been donating since that time, since the scandal first broke out. And we've, with that money, we've been able to train, hundreds of people, if not thousands at this point.
Awesome cause.
Awesome.
Matt, the main reason we wanted to bring you on is it is draft season, and we're trying to get people that like to specialize in certain fields and who really have like a particular interest in certain fields to come on the show and talk about the draft class for a specific position group. And if I heard you correctly one time, you really have a thing for running backs. You love evaluating running back talent. I heard you, not tooting your horn, but, people had like pointed out how like someone like Spencer Ware, for example, our father's a Kansas City Chiefs fan. He wasn't very high amongst many people in the draft community. However, you were pretty high on him. So running backs is kind of your thing, if we can say that. And I want you to kind of give us a deep dive on this running back class. And Gary has watched more of these guys than me. So why don't you two go back and forth with some ideas on the running back class? I mean, I guess let's start at the top. Top three guys, McCaffrey, Cook, and Leonard Fournette. Now, I haven't watched your Fournette video, but I saw you tweeted out a couple times and saying, hey, listen, we've been hearing the Adrian Peterson comp for a while. And you say, listen, he's not Adrian Peterson, but that's still okay. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. Because when you take a look at running backs, a lot of what as fans or media or the public often imagine when we're thinking about running backs is how we visualize a star running back. And we think of Adrian Peterson as the guy who's been at the top for a long time, or even Marshawn Lynch, who's been at the top for a while now. And when you think of them as runners, they're big guys with enough speed to be able to break it, but they also have that agility where they can jump cut across a couple of gaps, and they can create behind the line of scrimmage or in the crease with a great deal of dynamic movement side to side to make people miss or to find that next lane or flip the angle of pursuit that's coming at them and be able to turn like a 12-yard gain into a 30-yard gain. And with Leonard Fournette, he doesn't have that style of play. Now, we're going to watch this RSP film room that I've done, that I do on YouTube. I do these types of videos on a regular basis analyzing players. And it should be noted that this is a game where he's coming off a high ankle sprain and he's playing hurt. But if you watch his tape, you'll find that even his movement in these games are indicative of his career, really. He's not a guy that's going to give you a ton of jump cuts and get close to the line of scrimmage and cut across, two gaps to find an open crease. He's a guy that you want him to build up speed downhill or to the outside towards one crease and maybe make one little adjustment with shortening his stride or taking different steps and hitting that hole with authority. And that's more of the type of a game that you would see from a guy in an I formation running ISO or running power plays, someone that makes smaller adjustments and is just going to manipulate that one crease or that one crease over to get his yards and do it with enough force heading downhill that it's not going to require a huge change of direction. And that's what he's really good at. But the problem is that, back in 2008, he'd be unquestionably the top back in this class because we were barely talking about running backs by committee. We were barely talking about spread offenses at that time. We were still looking at single back offenses and I formation offenses with fullbacks, and he would be that guy. But now, his strength isn't running from most shotgun types of sets. Now, certain teams may run more power-oriented plays from that and allow him to work downhill from the shotgun, but he's better off in an I or in a single back set. And that's why I'm saying it's okay, because if you fit him with a team that does that old school downhill running approach, he's got that size, he's got balance, he's got really nifty footwork. If you're asking him just to adjust his stride to defeat angles once he gets into the open field, or to adjust one gap over. And he's got good enough vision. I mean, this is a guy that he reminds me of a player that may sound underwhelming to many, but he reminds me of Stephen Davis. Stephen Davis was about 230. He ran a 10.4 100 when he was in high school, which is actually 0.4 of a second faster than what Fournette ran. So if you think of Stephen Davis as some old, slow guy who played at Carolina or for the Rams at the end of his career, you're not thinking of the Stephen Davis who was with Washington and who started Auburn. Stephen Davis was a very powerful guy who could catch the ball well, had very good vision. John Fox leaned on him hard, and he was a big reason why the Carolina Panthers surprised to get into the Super Bowl, to even play the Patriots back, at the early part of the millennium. So when you look at Fournette, I think his upside is more in that range as a realistic look rather than talking about Adrian Peterson or the next coming to Jim Brown. Could it be possible that he becomes that great of a player in a great scheme? Yeah, but let's tame those expectations and start with someone a little more realistic.
I like the Stephen Davis comparison. You know what, Matt? I got to tell you, I'm not the biggest Fournette fan. I don't know if you listen to the show. I just don't see it. And, a lot of people are probably puzzled listening to that, but I see a fair comparison to more of a LeGarrette Blount.
Yeah.
He's a guy that's going to take a lot of momentum to get him going. And the thing that's most disheartening was the combine numbers. I mean, you look at the 40 time, that's all well and good. We knew that in a straight line this guy could boogie. But the 27-inch vertical, that shows me there's a lack of explosion there. And the thing is, these linebackers in the NFL, these defensive linemen are too good that they get, back in the day, he could run over anyone. It's not going to work in the NFL when you have to get that big body in motion. You got to pick up a head of steam. I could see him getting stopped behind the line of scrimmage often just because, A, he's not the most nimble athlete, and B, like I said, that explosion, that's kind of disheartening for me. I just don't know how Fournette's going to transition to the NFL and be a star. I know he's going to go in the first round. I know he's high on a lot of people's boards, but he scares me. I label him as my biggest, who's going to probably be the biggest bust of this year's draft.
And I think I don't think there's anything wrong with that analysis, because what you're talking about is really that he is a fit-based back. You know, in that sense. I mean, if I'm going to use your words and spin them to a positive with this, I would say he's a fit-based guy. If you're going to ask him to be in a spread offense and make people miss and avoid penetration into the backfield by linebackers, you have the wrong back. Right. You're done. But if you put him behind the Raiders, or you put him behind a team that is going to run power and get downhill, well, you know, I would say that while Carlos Williams may be a little more explosive to a certain extent in some of those areas, Carlos Williams running downhill, you get him running downhill rather than jump cutting around, and you've got a similar back in Fournette Williams, though Williams is faster, top speed too. But Williams looked pretty good with your Bills, I would think.
Absolutely. The thing is, Williams could get to the hole a lot faster than Fournette can. If you look at a lot of Fournette's clips, and this is what I'm talking about, that initial burst is what allows Williams to get to that second and third level really fast. Listen, when Fournette is in the open field, when he gets to 20 yards, you're first of all, you better bring an army to tackle the guy, because that locomotive has already picked up a full head of steam. But the thing is that I turn on the 2015 Alabama tape. Okay, because that's the type of defense he's going to be facing week in and week out. That's an NFL caliber defense. He didn't do diddly poo, and you know what? Like, everyone could say, oh, you know, but he wasn't even able to get up to the line of scrimmage on most plays.
Yep.
And that's it. To me, it's just like, it's so disheartening because, like I said, I love big backs. Steven Davis, I mean, I take guys like that any day of the week. The 230-pound guys, I love them. Kyle can attest to that. My favorite player to watch when I was in high school was Mike Allstott. I mean, I just love the hard-nosed running style. And Fournette has that. I'm just worried what happens between 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage until he gets up to the line of scrimmage. That's my biggest qualm with it.
And I think it's a good one to have. And I've watched those Alabama games for sure. The thing is that when you scout certain players, I think the thing that I found, at least for this, that I would offer as maybe a counter argument, is that when you scout certain players, I've always loved scouting guys against defenses that overwhelm the opposing offense. Matt Forte earned one of my highest grades when he was at Tulane playing LSU, when LSU had pretty much, you know, every player except for one maybe could outlift everyone on that offensive line. Even the cornerbacks could outlift him. I mean, it was insane. And even though he averaged like less than 2 yards per carry in that game, you could see the creativity, the ability to avoid penetration, all of those things that made him a good player. Ahmad Bradshaw, same thing when he played Tennessee's top-ranked NCAA defense back in the day. Similar player, where you could see that happening, or even Joseph Adai, you know. But with Fournette, that's the thing, is stylistically, if you're going to face Alabama's team, which is going to overwhelm LSU's at this point. Now, if you're talking about an evenly matched squad where you see some level of penetration, but you see some decent blocks, I think that might give you a little bit more of a taste of what the NFL's game is going to be about, where he's not going to get overwhelmed every time in the backfield. But to me, what the difference might be, and where I would parse that, is he going to be a special back? Probably not, because he can't do those things. And that's what you're looking for as a top pick in most cases. But if you say, look, we can put him in a team where most of the time we have an O-line, we feel confident that we are going to get him at least 2 to 3 yards into the line of scrimmage, and he can use that power and use that acceleration in the contact that he likes to do better than pretty much anybody in this class, then you have a fighting chance and you have a good argument for him as something more than a boom-bust risk. But he's number one on my board, but he is a boom-bust guy, and it's really about fit more than anything else, because you could take the other three guys on my board, and depending on where they go, it's so close, depending on where they go or whether one stays healthier than the other, one of those three could easily be the top back. And really, there's 5 guys that probably could be that way.
He'd actually probably be a pretty good fit in your Buffalo Bills offense, Gary.
I really don't think so, Kyle. It's a zone scheme. I don't.
Well, I guess now I'm thinking 2016 offense.
Yeah, that would be the case. But yes, you know, he's got to read the hole right, and he's got to make a decision real quick. I just don't see it with Fournette. And like I said, he scares me as a prospect. I'd hate to turn in that card and his name would be on the other end, just because, like you said, Matt, he's a boomer bust prospect.
There are plenty of guys I respect who feel exactly the same way.
I mean, and that's what it boils down to. I want the sure thing. I think Cook is more of the latter when it comes to that.
Hey, let's talk about McCaffrey first. You got two videos on McCaffrey, one on his blocking and this one, Matt. Like I said, I haven't watched too much of the running backs yet, but what are your views on McCaffrey? Because this guy, people have always been high on him. Some people soured on him a little bit this year, said his 15 tape was better than his 16 based on what I heard. Really good receiving back. Some people are saying, listen, he could be a second-round wide receiver if he were to declare as a receiver. And you want to talk about tearing up the combine. This guy certainly did that. What are your thoughts on Mr. McCaffrey?
Well, I mean, if you're talking about safe picks, it's funny because in 2008, he wouldn't have been a safe pick. He would have been the guy that we've been questioning. But now that the NFL is in these spread attacks and you have these combinations of, hybrid players and a lot of things that you can do with them, he's probably the safest back in this class from the standpoint of on-field, off-field, the fact that he played at the most pro-ready type of set at Stanford that you can get. The NFL, with their early round picks, Gary touched on it really well, which is with your first pick, you don't want to have to imagine a lot of things. You want it to be safe. You want to know what this guy's about. Well, the reason that Christian McCaffrey probably went to Stanford, besides the fact that his dad Ed was there, was an alum, is that his dad Ed probably said, "Look, you want to get in the NFL, you want to be a top pick, go to Stanford, where the NFL doesn't have to use any imagination as scouts to know that this is a pro-style set, a back who can run behind pro-style schemes and get the job done at a high level." And that's exactly what he did, because really his best skills aren't always out of this offense. Because this offense does run a lot of eye. It does run a lot of power and gap. And while he's quick enough to hit those holes hard and do that work, he's a guy that you can use a lot in space too. And you could also use him in zone schemes. So you get that variety at Stanford, but really a lot of their line play is kind of like a scrum. It's like an organized scrum in many respects. The line splits are very tight. And when you're evaluating a back, sometimes you see things that you may think are hesitant, tentative behaviors that are really more patient behaviors based on what's going on. And you may also question just how fast or quick is he really? And you may want to have to look at the combine to get a little more verification to make sure that your eyes are seeing correctly what's going on here. A lot of people make it out to be like a white-black thing, always white, so everybody thinks he's slow, which, people make those arguments, fine, whatever. And there's always been validity to some of that, and some it's a little overblown. In this case, I think it's overblown. It's more about the scheme, because Tyler Gaffney, I remember back in the day, also didn't seem quite as fast until you actually see him run in terms of his tape. And it's always kind of been the case with Stanford's game. So I like him a lot. I think that he would be a terrific fit in most offenses. He reminds me more of a Brian Westbrook type of player, a guy I really loved who could get it done between the tackles if you asked him to at a higher level than you might expect. But he's really a guy that you'd love to have both as a run-pass threat, kind of an upper scale Giovanni Bernard. Some people see him as something better than that. I've talked to some scouts who say, I've talked to two scouts who've said to me at different times that he reminds them of Reggie Bush in the way that what Reggie Bush everyone thought he'd be. So if that turns out to be the case, then you're looking at a guy who could be a star. I don't see him in that light as much, but I was a big Brian Westbrook fan. I thought he was a great player. And I think that, McCaffrey has that potential.
Kyle, I tell you, I feel like I'm back in high school, man. Stephen Davis, Brian Westbrook. I mean, I'm not these names.
I'm an old man,
These are the names that I was when I was in high school. These were the star running backs right here.
Yep.
I'm waiting for the Clinton Portis reference. Edgerrin James.
Yeah. Oh, Edgerrin James will definitely get on for me. He's one of my all-time favorites. So we'll find one.
He was an excellent running back.
So let's talk about the other guy who's been getting a lot of round one hype, but after his poor combine performance and some potential character concerns, as some are saying, Mr. Dalvin Cook, Actually, I just saw that someone mentioned the both of us in a tweet, Matt, about Dalvin Cook. What are your thoughts about Mr. Cook?
Sure. I'm more worried about him off the field than I'm on the field. And I don't grade players based on character. So he's actually ranked fourth on my board, but it's more due to some of the durability and ball control issues. If either one of those issues were not there and didn't mark down as grade, he might be the top back in my class. But I can't ignore the ball security issues. So he has to get marked down for that, even though you have to expect that he'll improve. Put that all aside. On the field, basically what he is and what he's about, I don't worry about the combine that much, because when you look at his workouts in the Nike camps back in, when he was a high school player, he had a faster 20 shuttle, which also he ran a faster 20 shuttle in his pro day workout. His vertical was always on the lower end of the scale compared to what you would have expected. So if Florida, and then you look at some of the backs who also had lower verticals, Joseph Adai, Devonta Freeman. Those guys seem to get it done. Devonta Freeman seems to get it done and is able to create and has that explosion despite a lower vertical. And when you look at what he does as a back, similar in terms of build, they have very similar builds. The difference is that Cook isn't that kind of jump cutting back on the same level as Freeman. He's more of a guy who kind of swerves in and out of contact, out of spots, and he does have good footwork and he has great hips. His running style is a little more unique. He's not, when you watch him move, he can change direction well, but it's not that hard plant and cut as much as it can be about kind of bending the hips and weaving around at kind of like a street motorcycle in the way that it can take corners. He can do that as well as anyone I've seen. And he's got that great acceleration and burst in the open field. And to me, I don't see him as powerful as some people may, project him to become. I think he needs to learn to lower the pads a little bit better into contact so that he can generate a little bit more yardage, and I'm just not sure how
I've
good
definitely
he's
noticed
that
too. He doesn't when he almost never delivers a blow based on what I watched.
Yeah. Now he can bounce off hits and he can bounce off some hard shots. But yeah, is he gonna lower his pads and run through contact and accelerate it through it? No, that's not his game. It would be nice if he could do that a little more often, even if he's just taking the off shoulder. But he's not doing that.
Yeah, as far as Cook goes, for me, the thing I like the most about him is his ability to use his blockers. He has a great way of shielding and using the blocks to his advantage, more so than McCaffrey or Fournette. He's a patient runner.
Yes.
And that's one thing I got from Cook and Kyle. We always mentioned Priest Holmes. When we were kids, our dad's favorite player was Priest Holmes. We were going – and he was such a patient runner through the hole. It was like he would wait. And you see that a lot with Le'Veon Bell nowadays. He reminds me a lot of that guy. Now, of course, Dalvin Cook is not near the size of Le'Veon Bell, but I love the patience. I love the vision. It's not quite as good as McCaffrey's, but he's a patient runner. And when he does hit the hole, he hits it 100 miles an hour, which I do like.
Yeah. I think it's great. And I mean, the pass protection needs to get better. Now, a lot of people say, look, if you're going to have Dalvin Cook pass protect, you're doing it wrong. And a lot of people will say that. And I think that there's some validity to that, except that quarterbacks have to audible. They still have to count on you to pass protect in key situations where maybe the defense has basically out schemed you on that particular play, and you're going to be needed to block in certain situations, and they need to be able to rely on you. It's not that they can simply say, yeah, you're just going to only catch passes. So I think that's something that he's going to have to get a little better at, or he's going to have to get a lot better at. But, when you look at him as a weapon with the ball in his hand, it's hard to argue that he's not the top back in this class. I mean, that's, to me, if someone argued with me about any of the first four on my board and said he's a top back, I'm not going to say you're wrong. I would say you're absolutely right, and I see the reasons why. And you put him in an offense where he can run through zones. He can run zone well. You ask him to be a receiver out of the backfield, especially on some of these wheel routes or these flat routes where he can catch the ball with his back to the quarterback. He can be a very dangerous guy.
All right, so Matt, we mentioned Spencer Ware before. I'm curious to know who are some of your other Spencer Wares, guys that went on to the pros. People were really doubting them, not so high on them, but you were particularly high on them, and they exceeded most people's expectations and kind of fit in right into where you thought they'd fit. So I want some other examples of guys like that. And then I want to know this draft class, who are your Spencer Ware type of players?
Sure. Bilal Powell was a guy I had rated very high. It took him a while, but seems to be coming along reasonably well as a player. Matt Forte was a guy some people had doubts about that I really liked and had ranked fairly high.
How about that? Jets running backs.
See, there you go. Then also Le'Veon Bell's another one. I had him ranked highly and said the quickness issue is not a problem. Everyone's wondering if he's going to be quick enough to play in the league before he lost all that weight. And when you looked at his combine times, at his weight, he was still as agile as guys like Ahmad Bradshaw, another guy I liked, and Javid Best. Imagine at 230 pounds and you're running drills and measuring out on the level of Javid Best in 3 cones and 20 shuttles. Well, that should tell you right there.
Keep in mind, Matt, he was 244 when he stepped up, and he was a big guy. It's amazing. You look at him now, Kyle and Matt. He's 215 pounds, and he looks even more explosive. But his rookie year, he was still showing really good flashes. I knew Le'Veon Bell was going to be a star coming out of Michigan State. Funny story, Matt. I have a car wash, and there's a Pittsburgh Steelers fan that always comes to my car wash. And he knows that I'm the football guy around the area. And if he asked me a question after Le'Veon Bell's rookie year, he's like, Gary, I think we made a mistake drafting Le'Veon Bell over Eddie Lacy. I said, no, you're going to be fine. Trust me. Talk to me in 3 years. And sure enough, he came 2 weeks ago and he said, man, you were right about that conversation.
Yeah. I had the same conversations with Sigmund Bloom at Football Guys after a year, and I was like, he's going to be fine. Don't even worry about it. That line, I mean, DeCastro was hurt that year. You had that line was a shambles, and you could see exactly the way you described it. That's exactly how it went down. Once that line got healthy, and then he lost the weight and became even quicker.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. So those are some of those guys, yeah.
Yeah.
And what about your guys this year? Who are those types of guys this year?
I like Jamal Williams out of BYU a lot. I'm gonna lay another old school reference to you, which is Ricky Waters. I think that he's the type of player who is very adept at running a variety of schemes. He's patient. He knows how to get yards after contact. He has better burst and change of direction speed than I think that what he showed in workouts initially. If you watch it on film, I think it pops a little bit better. He's an underrated receiver, and I think he's one of the better pass protectors in this class. Aaron Jones out of UTEP. I'm a big Aaron Jones fan. I think that Jones is a guy that catches the ball extremely well. He's unbelievably smooth. He's played on a team that also has been undermanned and overwhelmed and has done well against higher levels of competition, despite that fact that his team's been overmatched. But he's a guy that knows how to, kind of like Williams. He plays a little bigger than his size indicates, and he's someone that has even better quickness than Williams, and he catches the ball extremely well. He's going to surprise other guys. Justin Davis is a long-term guy. This is not a guy that I would look at for the faint of heart, but if you look at, say, Justin Davis 2 or 3 years from now, you get him in a zone scheme and let him add maybe a good 10 to 12 pounds, I think he could really surprise because of the fact that he is so good in zone and he is unbelievably quick. He's slow, like in terms of as a back, in terms of long speed, but I think he's interesting. And then 2 other guys I'll mention, Joseph Yerby. He was Dalvin Cook's teammate in high school. And then he was also beaten out by Mark Walton last year when they had the changeover with Mark Richt coming over from Georgia. And every time I watch Yerby, he's a good pass protector. He catches the ball as well, if not better than Dalvin Cook. He's not nearly as fast, but he's very quick. He's got excellent agility. To me, he's kind of like the bargain version of Dalvin Cook without the top end speed. And I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up shocking people as an undrafted free agent. And the last guy if he gets his pads down a little more consistently and they give him, and he can get that downhill running game, I think Brian Hill could also surprise as a kind of a committee guy who can help out. Rugged runner who pass protects pretty well and has better speed than what I thought he did after watching his tape.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with a lot of what you're saying. I'm a big fan of Joseph Yerby. I think that he will be undrafted, and I think the team should take a flyer in the 7th round on the kid. I like what I see on film. He, 2016, I believe a shade over 600 yards, but the guy had 7 touchdowns. I mean, he is constantly making plays for that Miami team. I got to ask you, I'm a big Oklahoma Sooners fan, and they got 2 running backs going this year. And, 2 that they could possibly be, I'm saying probably both are going to be day 2 picks. But we see Joe Mixon now is shooting up on people's draft boards. I got to get your take on both Samaje Perine and Joe Mixon.
Sure. And, Mixon's my number 2 guy, or my number 3 guy, excuse me. And Perine's my number 5. And they're not that far apart. When you look at Mixon, certainly he has that. He kind of reminds me of a guy along that neighborhood of Matt Forte, someone who can, make those pretty jump cuts and make people miss, when they penetrate into the line of scrimmage. Excellent receiver out of the backfield. He has enough big play speed for his size to be a threat and turn, shorter gains into long ones. He can run inside and outside reasonably well. So I'm a fan of what he does on the field. Off the field, look, I look at this as my job is to evaluate talent, so I'm kind of off-field agnostic about things. And my take for most people is that if you have a problem with Joe Mixon getting an opportunity, then you need to go to your local legislator and get more involved in politics and figure out how you can do a little bit more rather than trying to ask the NFL to be the law enforcement rehabilitation agency, because they're just entertainment and they're there to pay people a wage. And I certainly know plenty of people who have made mistakes that are even as heinous looking, even though the videotape wasn't there for them. And they're vice presidents and presidents and CPOs and all sorts of things in companies, and they got second chances. So, right or wrong, I'm just telling you that's how it is. So this just happens to be in a spotlight. Perine, I think Perine could be the best back in this class if things fall right. When you watch this guy, and one of my RSP film room guests is Ryan Riddle, former Cal star, who played with the likes of Marshawn Lynch and Aaron Rodgers. He was Cal's leading sack getter and season record holder for sacks. He played a little bit with your Jets, played a little bit with the Raiders and the Ravens, and with the Falcons. He had a cup of coffee with each of them. They tried to put him at outside linebacker, and that just didn't work out. And he just decided at this point it was time to go back to California. But he's a very good evaluator of talent. He's got his own site called Draft Metric that I think has interesting data. And we did a show on Perine, and he did it based on, here's Perine as a junior, and we're going to go backwards to his freshman year. And you're going to watch the difference between him as a junior and when he is at a freshman. And if he loses some of that weight and regains some of that quickness and agility that he had, and it shows up at the combine, you might really have something here. And the guy is built like a cement truck. I mean, when he goes through, he's the strongest back in this class. I mean, you can talk about Fournette all you want. You can talk about all these other guys. There's Ryan right there, my buddy. And Perine's the type of guy that he doesn't even have to be going full speed for guys to hit him and slide off like, butter hitting a hot skillet. I mean, that's basically how strong Perine is, and he's got just enough burst to get into the open field and then carry people on his back, run through hits, bounce off tackles. He catches the ball reasonably well. He reminds me of a combo of kind of guys like, Michael Turner, Jamal Anderson, Leroy Horde.
Oh, Gary loves Jamal Anderson.
Oh, it was a big Jamal Anderson.
Yeah.
It's a travesty. He won the 7th round, but a product out of Utah. But yeah, I that number 32, it's reminiscent of Jamal Anderson. When you watch Samaje Perine run, it's very smooth for a guy his size.
Yes.
Like his cuts, I mean, I'm telling you, and you brought up an excellent point. Like if you go back, I mean, it seems like he's been playing forever on the Sooners. I mean,
Yeah.
because he started for so many years. I mean, he got playing time as a freshman, but he was an unbelievable player as a freshman. And you're right, he hasn't been able to control his weight. You know, this season he looked a bit sloppy. He wasn't fluid as he was. But if you go and look at the combine, and you could see the potentials there, and he could keep his weight under control, you have a really good running back, and I think you have a good running back for a long time to come. I think that you could get a consistent 8 years out of Samaje Perine.
Yeah.
On that whole 8 years to come deal, and you guys said I don't know too much about the player, but you said that he started for a long time. And, you know, sometimes people knock running backs for how long they started. Like, oh, man, he doesn't have much tread left on his tires because he's taken so many hits at the collegiate level. So, you know, you're drafting this guy and he might get one contract. Do you factor in stuff like that at all into your evaluations, Matt?
Yeah, I do. I study it and look at it and say, you know what? It doesn't matter one bit, because when you look at guys like Ray Rice, Cedric Benson, Adrian Peterson, not Edgerrin James, a number of backs. Like I've done this in the past where I've looked at players who had high workloads and how long they played in the NFL, and it blows that assumption out of the water. Now, there's some common sense. There, you know, it's like anything that's a half truth. It's got enough common sense to draw you in and go, that makes some sense. Of course, the more you play, the higher there's a chance for you to get injured. The harder you play, the more likely your joints are going to wear down. X, Y, and Z. Those types of things can happen, but there's no correlation. There's no real correlation there for all of that. It's really, if anything, I look at that and say, is the guy healthy? Yes. Did the guy have a high workload? Yeah. What does that mean? It means he can carry the load for you. It means that he can take punishment and dish it out. It means he knows how to handle punishment so that he doesn't get hurt. And it means that he's ultra productive. I don't know about you, but I don't want to overthink that kind of stuff. When I start looking at the numbers, I started showing it enough times over the years that I stopped even making the argument in the RSP anymore. But I may have to bring it back every once in a while, just in case for new readers, because it's one of those deals. When you look at the list of guys who are big time like that, it dispels that notion right away. And Perine, if you zoom to the end of some of these. The end of this video, you'll see some runs where he's like breaking off long runs. There's a game as a freshman that he broke the NCAA record for yards in a game. I think it was over 300 yards in the game, or close to 400 yards in the game. I don't even remember how much it is. But when you watch him play, you're going to see a guy who is outrunning some safeties in the Big 12. You know, outrunning, you know, holding his own against cornerbacks on some of these plays in the NFL. I mean, at this level. And, you know, you see these types of cuts and the ability to even just stretch forward and get a 4-yard gain like that. That's not bad for a guy his size, you know.
Yeah. I mean, he moves like a guy who's 205 pounds, and the guy's 230 pounds, you know. And there's estimated reports that, you know, this season he was tipping the scales at 241 at some time. So, you know, I'm a big Samaje Perine fan. The last thing the Bills need is a running back with LaShawn McCoy, Mike Gillislee. I like the kid, Jonathan Williams out of Arkansas. I like him, but I tell you right now, if Samaje, by God's chance, he falls in the third round, there's not a doubt you take him there. I mean, the value is just too good, and the way the running back positions has been devalued these last couple of years. You never know where Samaje is going to fall, but he's definitely not making it past day 2.
Hey, no. Gary, you just brought up Jonathan Williams. I'm curious to know, Matt, some of your thoughts about some of these young running backs in the AFC East currently. Jay Ajayi, Jonathan Williams, James White, etc. You know, what were your thoughts, not what they are now, but what they were coming out of school?
Sure. I looked at Jay Ajayi as kind of a wild horse, someone very talented, but had to get his discipline. He had to be a little bit more disciplined with not only how he carried the ball, but between the tackles, and making sure that he was making smart decisions between the tackles, not trying to bounce certain things outside. So I liked him a lot. White,
he is a Bronco. I mean, it's fitting that he'd be a wild horse.
See, there you go. White, James White, smart player, but I wasn't very high on him. I didn't think that I looked at him as a guy that can be maybe a helpful committee role player, but nobody that I was extremely excited about. I liked LeGarrette Blount coming out of school. I still think he has underrated feet and very good change of direction quickness. He has great flexibility in his hips for a big dude. Even for a smaller dude, he kind of does. So I was a fan of Blount, even though he's an older guy. Jonathan Williams, I thought I could see that lead back potential in a committee. I wasn't as high on him as other people were. I'm gonna have to probably remember to look up why that was, because it's been a while since I've looked at that, and I'm fresh off of writing this thing. But I remember that I was probably a little lower on him than I was other backs. Like I had Jalen Richard higher than Jonathan Williams, which was an odd choice for a lot of people. But
I don't even know who that is, to be honest.
Jalen Richard was the committee back who went undrafted, who's got playing time with the Raiders and played well enough to earn like a major role playing shot splitting time for the Raiders in their starting lineup this year.
Was it the injury maybe to Jonathan Williams? Because a lot of people had him, they were like, he was an afterthought. I mean, he tore it up his junior year, him and Collins both at Arkansas. I mean, I was actually shocked that he made it to the 5th round when the Bills took him. Ball security has been another issue of his as well.
Ball security and durability will certainly lower the bar on my grading list for a guy like that. I'm trying to remember whether either pad level or some of his decision-making might have been issues. I'll have to look that up and get back with you guys on that. But I know that he was a guy that was not in my top 10, but he was in my top 15. But he was in the higher, around 11th or 12th, which is low for a guy that you would think as the next starter for a class that wasn't unbelievably strong.
Right.
Matt, curious to know any other guys that you'd like to mention before we let you get on out of here.
I just think, from the standpoint, this tight end class is unbelievably strong. And I know that you guys have Charles Clay and, Safarian Jenkins is already.
And we got nobody.
Yeah, exactly. So this tight end class is unbelievably strong. When I do 3-year rankings now to show people kind of where I was at with where these guys rate in relation to where I had them, guys from the past 2 years. And my top 5 are higher than anybody I've rated in the past 3 years.
Wow.
So it's a really strong
So you're saying
group.
your 5th guy is higher than
Hunter
any
Henry.
of your top guys the previous 5 years?
Austin Hooper.
Yeah. Max Williams.
Max Williams. Yeah, absolutely. So you're looking at guys.
Hold on. Even Nick O'Leary.
Nick O'Leary. Even the
John
Golden
Mackey
Bears
Award winner?
grandson. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So, but even my number 8 guy, Jeremy Sprinkle.
That's my boy. I love me some Jeremy Sprinkle.
Yeah, yeah. And he's that guy that when you look at him on the field, he's a pro's pro. He's that kind of player that's going to develop into a long-term guy. If you're just a strict football fan and not into fantasy football, this guy is going to even be a higher-rated guy than where I have him.
Matt, where does he fall in your opinion? Where do you think he goes?
God, well, if the Colts were smart and it would be nice to see him go there and replace what they could have had in Dwayne Allen if Dwayne Allen stayed healthy.
What round do you think? Because I'm seeing he can be as late as a 5th round pick because of this class.
Yeah, and it'll be because of the whole incident at the Belk Bowl where he
$450 card.
Yeah, so because of that, he will probably fall to somewhere between rounds 4 to 6. And that's just the reality of the scenario. And they're going to get a deal out of this guy because he can do it all. I mean, very good adjusting the ball, good after the catch in terms of once you get him to build up speed, he's pretty nimble. He's a good blocker. He's a smart blocker who just needs to get a little stronger up top. As Lance Zierlein, the NFL.com analyst who does great work, joked, and I think in his profile I read earlier this week, it's clear he missed arm day, in the weight room. But when you watch him block, a lot is there. He's still got the size you're looking for. I think he's going to be able to make up for those missing arm days over the next year and a half, and he'll be just fine.
Yeah, you know what? He's not a guy that'll knock someone off the ball, but he does an excellent job of shielding guy. He has a pretty good idea and pretty good feel for where the running back's going to be at any given point, and he does an excellent job of shielding his body. You know, we used to talk all the time, Kyle. And remember, we had some people who used to play on the offensive line with us that were just not good. But coach said, just get in their way. Just get in their way. And usually they can't make the tackle. And that Jeremy Sprinkle does an excellent job of that. And not only that, he was using that H-back role, his junior year. He could definitely get it done if you need to.
Yeah, and he can pass protect. He's someone that he's smart about reading. He's smart about reading green dogs. He's smart about who to pass the player off to. He sees, games that are being run and is able to sniff those out pretty well for a guy who's playing tight end and is often going out for passes. And he'd be great on a team where you run I formation and you run a lot, or a West Coast offense where there's a lot of play fakes, and he can drift out of the backfield and run some of those shorter routes because he's very good at setting up believable looking blocks and then drifting out into the backfield into his routes on like shallow routes and things like that.
I was on Twitter and someone brought the question up to me, would you take O.J. Howard in the first round? And, people are gushing over O.J. Howard, and he is the total package. But my response to him, I would rather, as much as I love O.J. Howard, I would rather wait to the fifth round if I could get Jeremy Sprinkle.
Hey, man, I'm with you. And it's funny because here's the thing about O.J. Howard that is one of the most fascinating storylines of this draft. Everyone's building him up to be a superstar. But watch his role in this offense at Alabama. And, I'm not a big stats wonk when it comes to talking about production, when it comes to evaluating, because that doesn't mean anything to me. It means a little bit, but not nearly as much as people say. Yes, he only had 2 really huge games in his career, and they both came in the biggest moments, and the rest weren't there. But when you look at that in context with his game, what you notice is like, he's used a lot on shallow routes. He's used a lot as a blocker. Have we really seen him make the type of catches that David Njoku make, Bucky Hodges, Ethan Carter even, or Evan Ingram, or even Gerald Everett or Jeremy Sprinkle? The answer is no. You haven't seen him make these high-end, tough NFL big boy receptions. And it's not necessarily his fault. It's the way the offense was set up, because the offense often, again, was let's throw the ball outside. We had Amari Cooper. We had Derrick Henry and Eddie Lacy. We had TJ Yeldon. We're going to run the ball and throw the ball outside because it's easier on our quarterbacks who aren't going to be making big-time reads in the middle of the field in difficult situations. But at the same time, there are NFL scouts who we've heard at least leaked, whether it's true or not, who are wondering how passionate he is about the game. Okay, I hate those types of questions because most of these football players are pretty dedicated, but I will say this, if there's any truth to that, it might be because O.J. Howard was supposed to be this great prospect, and we've been hearing about him for years and years and years and years. How come he isn't a bigger part of the passing offense if he's so great? Is it because he doesn't always make the effort that he needs to make? Does he have focus issues? Is he a guy that the team said, it's not our quarterbacks, maybe we just can't count on him to make these high-end plays that we expected? He was the one guy at the Senior Bowl I watched this year who really got ripped by the coaching staff just once during the day. And it was like, I didn't see that. I mean, it was the Browns staff doing the things here, and you can make fun of the Browns all you want, but Al Saunders is a good receivers coach. These guys are, the coaches, I think, are not as big of a problem with the Browns as it is the front office and the ownership of this team. But when you look at You look at them, they were very positive with all their players all week, and they did a lot of correcting and a lot of coaching. And it was the only time I watched practice that week where one player really got called. It was like, dude, you got to do better than that.
Yeah.
You got to do – and it was him.
Yeah, like I said, if you go on Twitter right now, the Bills fans are scattered with O.J. Howard. They all want O.J. Howard. And the argument is, maybe the best is yet to come. I mean, this was
maybe.
This was the case in 2014 where you saw Austin Safarian-Jenkins and Jason Morrow. They had all the stats going, but Eric Ebron had all the tools. He was the guy who had all the tools, all the skills, and his stats weren't as high as those other two individuals, but just determined that he was just probably the better football player overall. And you know what? That started to be true because he's the only one of those tight ends that's starting nowadays, and he was the only first-round pick. I'm not complete. I love O.J. Howard, but I'm not – I don't know if I would just make the slip and put him as the number 10th overall pick. I don't know if I could do that. At 20, 25, I'd be comfortable. I don't think he's going to – I think he's going to go way higher than that, but I
it is. The all-star level potential as a dynamic receiving weapon is a projection. Now, as an all-star player who can maybe be a great blocker, who can give you decent work as a receiver, I buy that all day long. And and that translates to exactly what you said in terms of where you go with rounds with him. And I love that Kyle's doing this stuff here with the video work and making fun of. I made a joke that I was a Cleveland Browns fan in my past life, and I still somewhat am. But I grew up in Cleveland, so I've joked that he said, "Well, it's a fun time of year for Browns fans," and I said, "Yeah." I said, I said, "Not really though. It's kind of like the whole Lucy holding the football for Charlie Brown." So that's why we're getting a little bit of this right now. This is the kind of stunts I pull on my show on the Audible on Thursday nights with Cecil Lammey and Sigmund Bloom. I'm the one always pulling this crap, so it's fun to have it pulled on me.
Yeah, we like to be serious, but at the same time, we like to have fun. And you guys bring up excellent points. I mean, we're seeing O.J. Howard potentially top 5, top 6 talk here in a very good draft class, especially a good tight end draft class. And one of the questions that I wanted to ask is, should Mike Maccagnan be fired if he doesn't come out with one of these good tight ends in this draft? And just to think about, O.J. Howard, let's say he were to go to 6 at the Jets. That's kind of scary. He's shown make a flash here or there, but has he done that stuff consistently enough to, kind of make you comfortable that he can be your guy to do that stuff all the time? And I don't know. I personally would not like that pick. Matt, you've been on here so long. We're going to let you go. I think you've probably been one of the best guests that we've ever had on the show, and we've had a lot. So thank you so much for coming on. Again, people, purchase the RSP. We're talking about some of these old players, and we're trying to think, what was Matt's take on good old Jonathan Williams? Well, listen, hey, you want to find out, and listen, he's dedicated a lot of writing to each prospect in there. Go and purchase some old RSPs if you want. They're at a discounted price, not as expensive as the current one, so you can go and do that on his website as well. On Twitter, at Matt Waldman, WALDMAN. Am I missing anything that I should be plugging, Matt?
No, man, this is great. This was a great opportunity for us to have a nice conversation. I'd love to come on again if you guys would have me. And this was a fun show.
You are welcome anytime, Matt. I'm telling you that right now.
Excellent.
We would enjoy that very much. So we'll definitely be in contact for something in the future. All right, Matt, take care.
All right, you too.
Matt, bye.
Bye.
So that is the great Matt Waldman. Listen, guys, we plug a lot of people's stuff around here, but that's one that we really can't praise highly enough.
That should be part of his name title, the great Matt Waldman. I'm telling you, that's how he should be introduced every single time. Any given show he appears on.
How about that?
You know what? You know the thing I like about his content he brings out, especially is that he breaks it down in layman's terms, like that quarterback assessment, whether it's a starting caliber, star caliber, like anyone could read that and pretty much get at what he's talking about.
The cool thing about Matt is, and I've been following Matt's work for a long time now. One of the guys that when I really started to get into it and, wanted to do a podcast and wanted to know what I was talking about, he's one of the guys I got introduced to early on. And, getting familiar with his background, because I've heard him on a lot of different things, he's got a lot of life experience. It's not just football experience. It's not like he just woke up one day and started writing, football articles since he was 17 years old. No, he used to be a musician and run a business. And, if you hear right at the top of the show, right before you came on, Gary, he was talking about some of the other things that he used to do. So, he's had a lot of, management positions throughout his life and stuff. So clearly you could see that, he knows how to deal with people and whatnot. And, it's so interesting. A lot of these young writers and podcasters and guys that cover the league and make some money off doing it, Matt Waldman's kind of like a father figure to them. It's interesting.
I tell you right now, Kyle, the thing I love most about Matt Waldman, he makes a lot of references that I could translate over to NFL 2K. Stephen Davis, Brian Westbrook. I thought he was going to start talking about Deshaun Foster. That was one thing I really loved, that he brings it back. And you know what? When I think about those examples, because those are the guys I followed in high school, you can relate those guys to the running backs that are coming out.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right, let's move on. So, really good running back discussion. That was probably one of my favorite draft discussions that we've had thus far. Let's go ahead and let's get to the phones, Gary, and let's put on none other than.
Are you loyal to your team? 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 This team has taken me through my cancer and all my friggin' eye surgeries.
Wow.
And that's the bottom line. They keep me alive every day. And you know my personal story, Bob. So this story means diddly squat. Stay loyal to the Patriots. And that's all I get to say, Bob. I love you. I'm going to send you a personal message. And hopefully I'll see you in Phoenix.
All right. That is none other than the one, the only, Nick Baby Love. What's going on, Nick?
Hey, guys. How you doing, Gary?
Hey, Nick. A long time no hear.
Well, we're good. Well, just a few cross-ups there, but, I'm back on today. That's what's most important.
That's right.
I wanted to, of course, shout out. You get a Buffalo Bills fan introduced by you and Kyle to me. My man, Chris Freddy Krueger, from the Rock Pile Report.
You got it right that time, Nick. You were calling it the Rock Report at first.
Yeah, Rock Pile Report. Well, no, he grilled me enough.
Kyle, it's whatever Nick Maybe Love wants to call it. That's
true. Very, very true.
Well, and the fact that I'm following you guys and him now, hey, it's a big deal. So,
absolutely.
I'm just that's the OG in me. Just being careful what I'm doing on Twitter. But no, he's doing a great job. They love it. It's going to be interchangeable. And I got to tell Chris, I got to send him the show from today, even though I wasn't on. It was pretty funny, the PFW today. So, but, that's what this is all about, introducing us to people. I'd love to meet that gentleman. You also turned me on to Miguel at Capspace, whatever it is. They're a very intelligent guy. So I've been communicating with him, and we follow each other on Twitter also.
He's the best, Miguel, without a doubt.
Yeah, he's on all the shows. The guys love him. I talked to my buddy Bob Sosi, the announcer for the Pats, the other day, and because Autism Day is a big deal. One of his sons has autism, so I think that was Sunday, whatever was celebrated, National Awareness for Autism Day. That stuff, in the course of a show that should be mentioned, and of course he knows all the broadcasters and. I explained to him, about the Rock Power Report and about the AFC East brothers, and let's get those announcers on the shows from the Dolphins and the Bills and of course the Jets. And that little kid there from the Jets, they even retweeted some stuff. So it's I'm really just checking in, and I sent you to see did you see that text last? I sent the KY, which is our code for everybody listening. With Kyle, did you see the last text I sent you? Did you look at that, Kyle?
Kyle had to step out to use the bathroom real quick.
Okay, well, no, I just sent him.
But I tell you what, Nick, I'll answer for him. Yes, I saw your text, Nick. It was the best text I've ever seen. Thank you so much for that text. There you go. How was that accurate? Would he say it like that?
Well, it doesn't matter. Not necessarily. It's just that.
I tried.
No. But you're right on. My point is, I sometimes when somebody sends me a note, in my case, because I'm fighting to get the blue check mark, and I'll get that, soon enough. For a lot of people, just dealing with all the politics of Twitter. No, I sent him. One of the other major artists I worked through that I'm famous for in my career is MC Hammer. So him and I have got back together.
The Hammer time, baby. The Hammer time.
Right. Well, I sent him a text of the last tweet Hammer tweeted about me. He did half a dozen of them the last week, where the whole world's going, what? You lived with Hammer? Oh, you broke MC Hammer? And then the one he just sent, he says, I love you, and, we're going to do this and that with a fist, and then 100%, all the code stuff. And, obviously that comes to my phone so I can, people that don't see it on Twitter, I can, text it to them. You know what I mean?
I hear you.
So, well, no, that's big news, because the more in the loop I am, because remember, he's an example. He's different from a lot of artists. And he knows everybody. His real name's Stanley Kirk Burrell, as we're waiting for the legendary Kyle there to finish up
his little bathroom break. Hey, listen, I got
but go
Nick,
ahead.
Can I shoot you a question? You're down Miami.
But just to finish up on that, Hammer used to be the bat boy for the A's, so he's a big Oakland Raiders fan, and he's a big, obviously, Oakland A's fan because he knows all the players. And so if I'm back in a groove with him, that's a good thing. We can get a lot of publicities from the shows because he will come on the show, and
if we could get MC Hammer on this show, we would be.
He will come on the show. That's one of my best friends. Just look at his phone and see the text, and then look at my Twitter account with all the stuff. Because he followed me. He followed me on Twitter. He came after me because I wouldn't follow him. That's been like, a back and forth the last few months. But, we came to the parting in a ways. And, that's a personal friend.
I'm going through Kyle's phone right now, and sure as day, this text is sitting here right now.
And what does it say?
100% accurate about MC Hammer, man. 100%.
So what did he say about Baby Love?
He said he loves you.
There you go. It's personal, but I don't know what.
How can he not? That's the question.
What's because of my visual impairment? What about that fist? And what about the 100? And then what about that little face at the end? What does that mean? As he said, I love you, brother, whatever,
Kyle, you're better at emojis than me.
Hold on one second. Hold on one second.
He typed in that other stuff, but there's several other tweets, that he did. So, that's a good thing.
Hey.
He's obviously a big sports guy. Anyway, you were going to ask me.
Yeah, Nick, real quick because our phone lines are backed up.
No, I'm on.
I got to ask you. We're talking about MC Hammer. I just wanted to make some quick little chit-chat. Another famous music artist around the same time era, who's a Miami guy, Vanilla Ice. How'd you feel about him?
I know him very well. Okay, I mean,
did you get involved with his career at all?
Of course I did. To make a long story short, to keep it very brief.
How did I not know this?
To keep it very, very brief about him, and this is all true. Like I said, you can see the Hammer tweet, and there's a half a dozen other ones that are very personal that he put out.
We got to make it quick. So tell us about Vanilla Ice.
So Vanilla Ice, to make a long story, I did work for Itchy Band Records. And one thing led to another. He was here, and me and four other people, I won't take all the credit, introduced him, and then it was a matter of clearing the sample on the David Bowie song. So we went with Itchy Band Records, this guy, based out of, it's in Mississippi and in Alabama, sort of like in the South. And the record broke out of Miami. And he was doing clubs deals. I mean, he couldn't get arrested naked in the middle of the street. And so we all helped him. And the next thing you know, this guy, Charles Copperfield or whatever, was like a distributed major label, picked him up. And then, like your typical situation, he got, because it was such a big, there's a hit and then there's a mega hit in our business. And because he sampled David Bowie, you know what I mean? With, Ice Ice Baby, the bass line is a sample. We actually sampled the bass line. Then he got into the whole thing where he should have done a lot better, and they try to change his image. And it's a typical thing. When they don't listen to guys like Nick Baby Love, they go south, and that's that. But he's a good kid, and, unfortunately you get caught up in all, the ugliness, between the drugs and the going to the clubs and the wrong way. Unfortunately, that's a story that happens too often.
Hey,
Yeah, but
Nick, we know how that goes, man. And you know what? We always appreciate these stories. And listen, listeners out there, here's a lesson. Listen to Nick Baby Love. That's it. And he won't steer you wrong. Nick, we gotta let you go. We gotta get to the phone lines.
Kyle, you saying goodbye at least?
Absolutely, Nick. That's Nick Baby Love at NBL Music Salerno on Twitter. Give him a follow.
All right, guys, look, I love you. Listen, let's talk next week or talk during the week. And like I said, keep up the good work. The show's growing and growing. And I got your back on Twitter.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely, Nick. Thank you so much.
Nick, thanks, Nick. Love. Hey, Kyle.
Yeah.
I love how Nick always says, hey, you could look or you could go or look me up. Like someone's out there trying to discredit Nick Baby Love.
Well, Nick takes that stuff personally.
Well, you don't, Nick. If Nick's listening still, Nick, you're the man. You don't need to prove nothing to nobody. So don't worry about that.
There are more lovers than haters. They've been coming out in droves on PFW in love and solidarity.
That's right. But you don't need to prove nothing to nobody. You just keep what you say goes. What I was about to speak like Dad. What you says.
Let's get our Jets contributor on before he goes and does his show if his computer doesn't crash. That's none other than the Joe Blewett. What's going on, Joe?
What's up, fellas? How are you guys?
Joe, what's up, man?
Hey, Joe, just because your microphone ain't working very good for what you do to host your show doesn't mean you shouldn't use it when you come on here.
Kyle, what happened the last time that I used my microphone on your show? Do you remember?
Oh, it did chop out a little bit. Hey, listen, you should have came to me about microphone recommendations.
I think it's my computer is like 5 years old.
Oh, blame it on the computer now.
And we all have problems with Blog Talk. So,
all right. So, Joe, I think you had some strong things that you wanted to say coming on here today. So, go ahead and.
Oh no, well, I was going to say some strong things, but I already talked to Gary, and I told him, listen, I don't want to drive 45 minutes north and have to take care of my business. And he apologized, so we're good. There's no strong take. Like I said, I don't want to waste the gas on Gary.
Ain't worth it.
I hope you're not. Is that a threat, Joe?
Oh, it is a threat.
Okay. How old are you now again?
24.
If you want to make it to 25, I suggest you quit while you're ahead.
Yeah, you don't have the Kyle Fahey treatment.
Yeah. I gotta wait 2 years to get to his ass. Speaking of which, hasn't he called in yet, Kyle?
I don't know, but we needed a break from him now.
Yeah, we definitely did. That kid is a handful.
I'll go up with Gary just to watch that because that'd be pretty fun.
Well, you're gonna come with me. Yeah, you owe him a few shots too.
All right, so Joe, what's on your mind, man?
Nothing in particular. I'm still on a recovery from Saturday night where I was talking to you on the phone. I texted Gary about something about New York strip steak, and I don't even remember texting him that. So I'm still recovering.
I was kind of puzzled what that was about.
I read it the next morning, and I didn't even know what I was talking about. So
I didn't know if that was an invite to dinner or you were saving me something. I was like, I hope you didn't order me one. And then
no. Long story short, we had some drinks in us, and then my friend brought us to Carmine's, which I don't know if you know Carmine's is. But after a couple of appetizers and stuff, it cost us about $400. Which is always good because all I wanted was a McDonald's cheeseburger. But
how many guys were with you? Carmine's is family style, so it's big bucks going there.
Well, there was only 4 of us guys went back to the hotel to get changed and their stuff situated, but it was expensive. But in terms of like stuff I want to talk about tonight, for my show at least, it's going to be a lot of draft. I texted Kyle before. I'm trying.
Oh, did we lose Joe?
Oh man, I tell you what, Kyle, all that cement.
That's my opinion.
Hey, Joe, you chopped out for like a brief second, man. So you said there's gonna be a lot of draft talk on your show.
Yeah, and I said I would. I texted you and said that I'm trying to get into the draft 2-3 rounds deep right now. I'm like I said, like 1 3/4 of the way there because I'm not just going on to mock drafts and okay, this guy says this about him. This is my opinion. I try to take scouting reports and people's opinions that I respect, and then I watch the film myself. I try to watch at least a game or 2 of the prospects. So that's what I'm trying to do right now. So I'm like a little bit past the first round, and then hopefully by next week I'll be fully done with all this, but it definitely takes a lot of work to be knowledgeable in the draft in terms of getting 3, 4, 5, 7 rounds deep. So
you're trying to do the whole thing then, right?
yeah, I'm going to try to get to at least 6 or 7 rounds. At least have a
so now that you've been scouting, you've been really, I mean, you're deep into it right now. There's any people that stuck out that you might miss the first time around? Someone that you're thoroughly impressed with? It doesn't have to be a first round pick. It could be a later guy. I mean, that you're.
Oh, in terms of a guy that I was watching this week who really impressed me, the safety, Josh Jones. I don't know if you know who he is, Gary.
I'm familiar with that.
NC State.
NC State guy.
Yeah. 4.44, or I think it's 4.41 speed. He's a guy who could play. He's versatile. He can play both strong safety and free safety. Really aggressive hitter. He struggles a little bit in coverage, but he can still do it when he's asked to do it. He's a guy who really impressed me. Marlon Humphrey.
Joe, by the way, I'm pulling up attendees that have visited teams or have met with teams. I know each team's allowed 30 official visits. Is that guy, the safety you just brought up, was it Josh Smith or
Josh Jones?
Josh Jones. Is he on the Jets' radar? I think he is, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I believe the Jets visited with him and wrote like 10 articles, which we'll discuss on the show tonight too, where guys who the Jets have met with. It's good to see all that stuff, who they visited with, etc. But you know how I am. It's one, it could be a smokescreen. 2, it could just be due diligence, and 3.
You never know. But Buffalo Bills, if you look at their, like about 10% of the time, if somebody walks in the Buffalo Bills building, they draft that person. That's not a bad percentage when you factor in the amount of guys in the draft versus how many draft picks their team is allotted. So there is something to, going and touring a team's facility, that they have some kind of interest in you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, there's definitely some sort of interest there, because I don't think they're going to necessarily just draft somebody that they didn't bring in unless, it's a guy who's supposed to be in the second round and maybe he's in the 4th or 5th round, then you'll do it. But, yeah, there is some hint of interest there. But
I mean, there's also smoke screens too, Kyle.
Yes.
Especially when they have a top 10 pick, usually teams try to be really crafty, especially during quarterbacks. Teams are, is this guy actually interested? We got to trade up. We got to beat him out.
Yes.
Teams are smart. They're aware of what other teams are thinking. It's not often, but it definitely happens.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Joe. Some other names, man. Throw some names at me that you've been, that, like I said, that maybe didn't stick with you the first time, but now that you're really into it.
Well, yeah. I got my little notebook here with all my notes and stuff. It's like it's almost impossible to remember all this stuff just off the top of your head. So I do have a notebook as per usual. I was watching a lot of Marshawn Lattimore State. He was my number one guy in the beginning, but now I'm kind of turned off of him a little bit just because of his injuries, his 1 year of experience. And then I started really noticing Garon Conley, his mate, his running mate there, the cornerback, really impressive.
Turned into Bisweeney for a moment, his mate.
His running mate. It's what you call it. Sorry. I'm not from the UK, but is what it is. Long corner. I think he had like a 38 or 37 against him. Plays the ball in the air really, really well. Rarely grabs people, at least when he's even with them. He does grab them sometimes if he's gets left in the dust, which a lot of people do it. Really good acceleration. So I liked him. Kevin King from Washington, the corner, obviously really impressive. Like I said, I'm only about 2 rounds deep right now of guys who I've really watched. I've heard some rumors about and news about guys who are the 3rd, 4th, 5th round, but I'd be lying to you if I told you I watched film on most of them. So, like I said, Kevin King's another guy, 6'3", 200 pounds, really long guy. Struggles a little bit with speed and acceleration and burst because he's just so damn long. But he really uses, like you saw Revis do in his prime, wins at the high point of the ball because he's so tall, really entraps guys to make catches. So he's another guy who impressed me a lot. Focusing on the secondary as of right now.
So, Joe, let's pick your brain for a moment. This is a conversation that we were having over the weekend. And, we both really like Malik Hooker and what he can do for a defense. If Marshawn Lattimore could stay healthy, what could he do for a defense? We're going to have Ian Wharton on in a couple of weeks. And, Ian Wharton, he does a lot of work with cornerbacks. And he was saying, like, he's not on Marcus Peters type level, Lattimore, but he's pretty darn close. He's that high on him. And Peters, it's not a matter of ability. Maybe if he could just be a little bit more consistent, he would be an even a tremendous shutdown corner. He obviously is that already. He's obviously a ball hawk. But let's say you were to draft either Hooker at 6 or Lattimore, who are both common picks, mocked to the Jets at pick 6. Yeah, they could change the dynamic of your secondary, which is a bad one right now. There's no doubt about it, especially Hooker, in my opinion. But how long are those guys going to last? Joe, I asked you the question. We love what Darrelle Revis did for the Jets, even though we don't really care about his personality and all that stuff anymore. But he was only elite for, I said, what, maybe 8 years? And you said not even. Maybe 6, maybe 5 years. Yeah. And the reality is that corners, their bodies deteriorate so quick, and it's very good that they're very, very, very good past the age of 30. And Hooker, he's already got some injury concerns. So what I was saying was, listen, man, I'm all for taking the quarterback at 6 because at 6, you think about pick 1, it's going to be Garrett. 2, I'm hearing San Francisco doesn't want to go quarterback. They want to wait on Cousins next year if they can't get him this year. 3, the Bears, they just picked up Glennon. They like Kaiser. Maybe they can get Kaiser late first round if they trade back or get him early in the second round. 4, Blake Bortles, you're not going to move on from him already, even though he stinks. 5, the Titans, they got Mariota. So unless the Browns trade back up from pick 12 to jump the Jets can have any one of their guys, whoever they think is the best quarterback in the draft, they can draft that guy at 6. I think that's a likely scenario. And even if that quarterback is an above average, if he develops into an above average starter, that's a win for you on draft day. So if you got, I don't think anybody's going to say this is the best quarterback class ever, but let's say the Jets go 6-10. You might not even be picking in the top 10 next year. You could be picking 11, 12, and you might not have your shot at whatever elite quarterback because they're going to pick 1 or 2. So if you pass on a potential franchise guy again who might not ever be elite, he might not ever be top 5, might not ever be top 10, but he could be an above average starter. Like, we said Tyrod Taylor's an above average starter. You'll take that, and that guy could be the face of your franchise for 15 years. And if you can draft well and build a good team around him, you'll at least have a chance at winning a Super Bowl every year. But if you are Ryan Fitzpatrick bad, Brock Osweiler bad at quarterback, you don't stand a chance.
Yeah, and unless you have some sort of absolutely elite defense like you did with the Peyton Manning-led Broncos in 2015, but the Jets don't have that elite defense. You look at the Ravens in 2000 when they had Dilfer. Those are historical defenses who win with a really bad quarterback. And, people argue with the Peyton Manning thing. Yeah, he was really bad. He couldn't throw the ball. He threw ducks more so than he did even in his prime. He always known for throwing ducks. But he was still there mentally, could still diagnose linebackers or the mic or, safeties or whoever it may be. You guys all know what goes into football. It's a pretty complex game. So he could still do that. But even if you said above average, Kyle, even if he turned into a average quarterback, when's the last time the Jets have had an average quarterback? And, it's hard to say, the ifs, and buts, and people get on me for that. But if back in 2009, 2010, do we go to the Super Bowl? Do we win the Super Bowl? In my opinion, they at least go. Pittsburgh, they had a great chance, and I think they would have won if they didn't put themselves in such a big hole, in the first half. So if they could have scored some points, that wouldn't have happened, and Mark Sanchez was a big part of that in the first half as well as some other things. But, even if, Trubisky or Watson or whoever it might be, I know you like Mahomes for whatever reason you like Mahomes. Even though I could see a little bit after watching him a little bit.
Matt Waldman's number 1 QB.
Everybody has different rankings. I think Trubisky's climbing a little bit more than me. At first, I really like Watson at number 1, in terms of number 1 quarterback. But Trubisky might be passing him for me now. But Mahomes is definitely my number 3. I just think a guy like Mahomes is really going to have to develop. He runs out of the pocket really quickly. You see him sail some balls.
Problem for me.
He sails on some balls because he has really good. He's a strong arm. He probably has the strongest arm of those 3 guys. Or I would say definitely has the strongest arm.
I don't think it's crazy to say he gets drafted. He's immediately got a top 5 strongest arm in the league in the NFL. I don't think that's crazy to say.
Yeah, and if not top 5, top 7, top 8, I would definitely say that. But he goes for the explosive plays. He leaves the pocket really early. Like I said, he sails on some balls. I don't think he has great anticipation. So I think he's a guy who really needed to develop for 2 years. Maybe 1 year, but I'm going to lean more towards 2 years. And the Jets don't need a project guy.
Why not? They're in rebuild.
Yeah, but my problem with the project guy is, Kyle, let's face it, if what happened to Bowles last year happens this year and he gets fired, we're going to have a new offensive coordinator. It's not going to be
And I got news for you, Kyle. McCagnet doesn't have 2 years either to wait.
Yeah.
So his ass is on the line too.
Yeah, but you can also think about it like this. If Woody Johnson says, oh, your only plan was Hackenberg and Petty at quarterback, and you had the pick of the litter and you didn't choose to move on from quarterback, because there is this philosophy out there that sometimes GMs, when they draft a new quarterback, it'll buy them a little bit more time because, naturally you got to give a quarterback a little bit of time to develop. But if you totally blatantly ignore the position and you think that you got a guy in-house that can be that guy, well, that could even give you less time. So
I totally disagree. I think that McCagnet, he needs to get it done right now. And he needs to get more of the finished product, which is probably Trubisky.
Yeah, and like I said, what happened last year with Hackenberg, where we had Gailey, and then it turned into Morton, and then next year it might turn into another offensive coordinator with another quarterbacks coach. What might happen with Mahomes if he comes here? Trubisky worries me too, just because of the fact that most of his snaps were from shotgun. So how quickly can he transition into the NFL game?
This is a shaky class no matter what.
Exactly.
It's not a good class. And as much as people like Mahomes, and even I like him too, he's not my favorite quarterback for the value. I always look at value, especially when all these guys I'm deemed as projects. I would say any other draft class, they might not even be first-round picks. Like I said, this reminds me a lot of the 2011 draft. Besides Cam Newton, all the other Blaine Gabbert, Jake Locker, Christian Ponder. These guys all had huge question marks, but they all were bumped up in the first round. And that's what I see with this class, And I don't even think that, some of these guys were I don't think some of these guys were even as dabbed as high as a prospect as Blaine Gabbert was coming out. I know that's funny to hear now, but you could go back and Blaine Gabbert had better scouting reports than any one of these guys. So it's just a shaky class, and I wouldn't be. It'd be very hard for me, even as a Jets fan, to pull that trigger. But unfortunately, the pressure's on. They haven't taken an offensive player in God knows how long since Mark Sanchez.
7 years, 8 years.
They're clamoring for a franchise quarterback. They just might have to bite the bullet and take someone that they're not just totally sold on.
Yeah, and I've said that before, especially on my show at 6. People ask me, "Oh, well, do you like a quarterback at 6?" No. The Jets fall in love with Mahomes or Watson or Trubisky, or I doubt Kaiser. I see Kaiser as more of a second-round quarterback, if that. I really don't like him at all.
That's your boy, Kyle.
No,
that's not my boy. I never said he's my boy. I did say that I had him at number 2, but
no. You could go to prior episodes. He was your favorite quarterback at one point.
That's not true. Joe will testify to that.
Oh no!
Joe, who's been my number 1 the whole time?
I believe it's been Mahomes.
Thank you. The truth has been spoken.
But you did say you liked Kaiser, so I remember that.
I'm not denying that.
No, there's definitely. I'll pull up the audio, Kyle. You definitely said you'd pick him in the first round, and you definitely said
Austin Howard, the resident Texas Tech fan that listens to the show. He'll also testify on my behalf.
Yeah, you said this recently, but months ago you were on Kaiser.
Nope.
Yeah, nope. Yes, you were. Sorry, when Mahomes was projected.
Pull the audio. I'll wait for it. Don't worry. I'll pull it up.
Oh yeah, I'll pull it up right now. Right now.
Once you send it to me, don't worry. I'll pull it up next week.
Okay, good.
Not happening.
Yeah, when Mahomes was projected as a second-round pick, you weren't saying diddly poo about him. Now all of a sudden. You know who's first to talk about Mahomes before even you, genius, was frickin' Fahey. And I said, man, Fahey, I watched him for the first time and I like him. Yeah, but before then you were on the Kaiser train, and that's
100% false.
That's the truth.
100% false.
There's controversy. I didn't start it this time.
Either way, they're all bogus. Even Mahomes is a long shot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's why, if Hooker's there, if Adams are there, I'm taking one of those guys. But if they love a guy, take him. That's fine with me. But and can we stop with the whole Sam Darnold thing? Oh, next year's quarterback. If I had $1 for every time I heard next year's quarterback in the past 10 years I've been really watching football, I'll be rich, because I hear that every year. The next year, they'll be like, oh, well, not Mahomes. Darnold isn't that good. Next year's quarterback, the guy from Oregon, he's really good. And then the year after, that'll be the next guy. So that drives me crazy.
People were saying that last year with Watson. Man, look at Watson going against that Alabama defense in the national championship game, man.
Yep.
They were saying top consensus number 1 overall pick, and how much have people soured on him? So
Hackenberg.
Yeah, right. Freshman year. Oh, he's going to be the number 1 overall pick a couple years from now. So, yeah, I definitely agree with you in that line of thinking. I believe Mark Schofield actually wrote a piece about how that line of thinking is flawed. Anyway, Joe, thanks for coming on the show. Joe
thank you.
RB31 on Twitter.
Joe always brings the drama, man. And even though he didn't start it, there's always drama when this kid comes on.
Is that my fault this time, or is it Kyle's fault this
Listen,
time?
I'm just pointing it out, all right? I'm not saying there's a fault.
And,
Okay?
and I think if there'd be a lot less drama if you weren't on the show, Gary, because you are a little bit of a Homer Bills fan. So I gotta go. All right. Have a good one, Gary.
I'm gonna leave on that note.
Yes, I am.
He dropped the mic.
Another salty Jets fan. Hey, listen, it's all good. This show would be less drama. The show would be a hell of a lot boring. I would say that much.
Yeah. We'll take this brief call, and we're staying to the 2 hours tonight, and keep this one brief.
We got to get to the list.
I think this is Finn Squad Enforcer. Finn Squad. Hey.
This is Melvin.
Oh, Melvin. My bad, Melvin. Hey,
That's
Melvin,
okay.
how's it going, man?
Pretty good, man. And yourself?
Doing excellent. You're fresh off WrestleMania.
That I am.
How about that, man? Every year going to WrestleMania. This year you went with Pops. That was cool.
Yeah.
I recently listened to the PFW story. You have to relay it now. People can go listen on PFW in progress. That was quite a story. You running into D'Angelo Williams, stepping on his foot, and he had all the Steelers linemen around you guys. You were scared for your life.
Yes.
Quite the story.
Yes, and I was. That was a bad time to have on a very cocky Tom Brady shirt, to say the least. But it happens. I swear I have those audiences. And to kind of continue this story a little bit, I know him from, of course, he played at the University of Memphis. So we actually used to play basketball on occasion, a couple of times. I know a lot of people that played at Memphis prior to that, and I just transferred from UC to come over there. I was actually going to return punt for the University of Memphis. So continuing that story, I guess that the first time I saw him, he had his little dreads or whatever it is. He was shorter than me, so I was like, wow, this dude is short, but his legs were like trunk. And he had a basketball. I first met him at the gym, and the guy somebody threw him a ball. He bounced one time, and like next thing you know, his feet were almost in my face. He jumped straight up and like dunked the ball. Short guy. I was like, goodness. You could tell that his legs were pretty explosive, and I thought that I was like, it took me a long time to dunk the basketball. I was trying my hardest, but he was effortless for him. But that doesn't mean I still didn't like him. I'm glad he didn't play on my team whenever we play basketball.
He's a short dude too, so that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, short, yeah.
Your feud has been going on for a while. Hey, what about your thoughts, Adrian Peterson visiting you guys? Would that be a good signing? Would he be an upgrade over LeGarrette Blount? Would you like it, considering the amount of money?
Is that even a question?
I know, but an upgrade when you factor in the money factor. How about that? Is that a better question?
There you go.
Yeah. Let's see. If I can get anybody for cheap, I would be for it. But seeing that we just paid this other guy, and I really don't know exactly how he's gonna fit in that type of scheme where we do a lot of shotgun, and he's normally a back, an I-form traditional back, and that's really not the Patriots kind of fit. I really don't see how. I don't really know what they're looking at. Now, I think from a pure skills standpoint, of course, I think Peterson, if he's still what he could be, mops the floor with Blunt, to be honest. I don't think that much of Blunt, but I don't know if coming to that type of – he's been a workhorse. Ever since he's been at Oklahoma, he's just been that main guy. Then he's going to come to a team that's going to use you as a committee. I really don't know if that's the type of team that he's going to be going through. If they signed him, would I be just up in arms? Not really, and that's just for personal reasons. I know he did that thing with his kids, but I hate to be like, I'm not insensitive to that subject, but I can think back to the things I did as a child, even from the day one. I feel like since I've gotten on this earth, I deserve some of mine. I got some bad ones like that, to be honest, but I know
you
that's
turned out okay.
Small child. Yeah, there's some. I've done a fair amount of things in my lifetime, starting, and that was the worst when I was that age. But I mean, he's got some issues for sure. I do think he has issues, but I wouldn't just be up in arms if they signed him. I think everybody deserves a second chance, and so I wouldn't be up in arms. But I don't know if that is scheme, and it always comes down to money with me. If you give this guy some money, and I don't know what you're thinking. I'd rather spend that on. We got some other positions I think they want to feel some more concerned on the defensive side of the ball. But I get tired of the Patriots always they take care of that offense. They have 40,000 people on offense, and then that defense sometimes they gotta, even though it looks good. And I know talking to other people are average, it's like I'm complaining about them, but they still need some depth in defense, especially in the linebacker role. So I'm not really that concerned about running back really if I look at things. But that's the only thing I said about that. If they signed him, I wouldn't care. But I'm not going for him. It's not like that. It's not a main concern to me. I let him go.
It's amazing that Blunt, Peterson, Jamal Charles are still on the street, and a guy like Tim Howard Hightower gets picked up. To me, it seems like Tim Hightower's been running since the names we mentioned earlier in the show: Stephen Davis, Brian Westbrook.
Right.
It's amazing he still gets employment, but these guys can't find a job. It just blows my mind.
And it seemed like there was like a low period, like where Hightower, he was he was something a couple of years ago, and then we didn't hear about him. And then like the last year or two, we've been hearing about him again.
I know, it's unbelievable. I mean, it's just blowing my mind right now that he could find a job, but these other guys can't.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just with the Patriots, and last time I say about that, if they had, Ben Jarvis, Green Ellis, Blunt, and Woodhead, and just a lot of people that entered that running back role that I don't think all that great, but they'll do fine in that type of offense. I just don't think that we need to focus on running back if I was looking at it. I don't know what his little situation is with Oakland. I think that would be more of a thing that he would want to focus on, since they don't I think they talked about that on PFW. That's more of his style type of running. I love Latavius.
They got a bunch of road graders in that offensive line. So, you talk about, power gap scheme, would be a good fit for him. But, the Patriots do a good amount of that as well. And you guys, one thing's you got a lot of little scat backs, third down backs, but, you guys pounded it a lot on first and second down last year. And, you don't have Blunt anymore. And there's no doubt that I think AP would be an upgrade. Is it is it cost effective? That's a different story. But I think you bring him into the Patriots as long as he's a team player and whatnot, which I don't see any indications of why he wouldn't be. I think it's certainly scary for AFC East teams, and he doesn't have to be the workhorse anymore. So, anyway, Melvin, we're going to talk about some other topics in these last 10 minutes before we scoot on out of here. Thanks so much for the call. He's on Twitter at EWMello, MELLO. And go and listen to him on PFW in Progress. He's a frequent caller there, and you can hear his whole story about WrestleMania and how he threw his father under the bus. That was a really good story.
God. Terrible, Melvin. Terrible.
Right? Melvin's telling a story about how much he loves his father, and then you listen to the story about 2 minutes later, he's talking about how he threw his father under the bus. That's from today's PFW episode, April 4th. So, Gary, got about 9 minutes before we close this baby out. What else should we talk about?
We got our countdown, Kyle. I don't know what you.
God,
Kyle keeps brushing this aside. This is how he shows his love for his brother.
Gary,
I slaved a whole 10 minutes on this, and Kyle's brushing aside a whole hard 10 minutes out of my day.
Will you forgive me for this, Gary? Please.
I will.
Thank you.
As long as you share your reports with me, just like I share everything.
I'm gonna. Don't worry.
I never billed Kyle. I never billed you for my NFL pass. Maybe I should start doing that.
Don't be saying that on the airwaves. They might catch hold of this.
I know. Since Kyle is so greedy.
Greedy? Come on, man. Those of you who haven't tuned in the past couple of weeks, we've been doing a countdown. It's draft season. We're talking about, not the biggest busts in team history or biggest disappointments over the last 20 years? It doesn't necessarily have to be a first.
No, these are these are draft busts, the biggest AFC draft busts over the last 20 years. And Kyle, they're first round picks because these guys are projected to be.
But it doesn't have to be a first round pick. Like you
do
have some second, third rounders in there, right?
None.
Oh,
There's
it's all
not.
first round.
It's all first round. That's what I'm trying to tell you, that the first rounders hold more weight. So yes, let's say for example, you can consider Christian Hackenberg or Geno Smith a bust, but they don't hold as much weight as a Mark Sanchez. All right. Anyway, Kyle, we're now into the top 10. We left off last week's show with Mr. Kyle Wilson, the pride of Piscataway, New Jersey. I still think he holds all the records for all the touchdowns, Kyle.
That's crazy because there's so many good players that came out of Piscataway, and you think of ball skills. You know, Kyle Wilson might have had a lot of things. Ball skills certainly wasn't one.
Yeah. And he won 3 state titles, Kyle, and during his tenure at Piscataway High.
Let's put a little asterisk there, Gary. No doubt Piscataway is a good program, but in New Jersey, our state championship system is a little flawed. There's like 19 state champions every year.
I agree that. And if all the Group 4 schools, let's say, because Don Bosco is a Group 4 school, and Bergen Catholic as well. If Piscataway had to play those teams, I don't know how they'd fare. But no doubt about it, Phillipsburg is an impressive win. Either way, let's get into the top 10. Kyle, I'm going to take you to the 2006 draft. The Buffalo Bills trade back into the first round to grab the pride of North Carolina State. No, it wasn't Mario Williams. No, it wasn't Manny Lawson. It was all 6'2", 307 pounds of John McCargo, Kyle.
Wow.
John McCargo.
Wasn't his nickname Big John McCargo?
I don't know.
Is that what you called him?
I think I called him Big John McCargo, but there's nothing big or good about this guy, Kyle. And the reason why this hurts so much is because the Bills, that same year, Kyle, they didn't have to go all the way to the first round to get their star defensive tackle. No, he came 4 rounds later in the 5th round. The pride of LSU, Mr. Kyle Williams, the 5-time Pro Bowler, was in that same draft class. And Kyle Williams, became an instant starter for the Bills, while John McCargo rode the bench for the whole extent of his contract, seeing very little playing time, often injured. And then, Kyle, after that, I don't have his profile up, but I don't think he latched on to another team after that.
Let's go and look it up. Big John McCargo. And what was the exact order that he was selected in, Gary? What was the pick?
I believe he was the 26th overall pick in that draft.
And what was the compensation that the Bills gave up to move back to select him?
We're pulling it all up. I'm ill prepared, Kyle.
Okay, let's see.
So they gave up a second and a third pick for him. The trade back in the first round.
Wow. And let's see. So he did play one season with Tampa Bay.
Yeah, and then
who knows if he even played. And Chicago Bears, he latched on with them after that, but he was cut that year. So you're talking 5 years, or no, 6 years. 5 years with Buffalo, rode the bench the whole time. Tampa Bay probably rode the bench there too. Chicago couldn't even make the roster.
Yeah, he was terrible. Terrible.
You know you're terrible when you don't even have a Wikipedia picture.
Yeah, that is pretty much a that is pretty much a standard right there. If you don't have a Wikipedia picture, you are pretty bad.
Just saying.
Right.
You're a first round draft pick. You don't have a Wikipedia picture. Bad. Okay.
Yeah. Anyway,
who's next on the list?
Moving along. This is 9th on our list, and I'm going to take you to the 2004 draft. Kyle, once again, the Buffalo Bills are back in the first round with 2 first-round picks. And it wasn't their first of the first-round picks they selected. It was the second. The pride of Tulane University.
Oh, geez.
your favorite and my favorite gunslinger of all time in the AFC East, none other than Mr. J.P. Losman. J.P. Losman.
Gary, does he have a song, or was that something that you just made up?
I think we're thinking of Trent Edwards, Kyle. Trent Edwards.
You used to sing "Straight Out of Tulane," something like that.
No, yeah, they're right. Someone had a YouTube video. Instead of "Straight Out of Compton," it was "Straight Out of Tulane."
Some of all these bad Buffalo Bills draft busts having these songs.
Yeah, I mean, he was Kyle. No one threw a better deep ball than J.P. Losman, but unfortunately, Kyle, that was the only thing in his repertoire.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got to say, Kyle, I mean, J.P. Losman to Lee Evans was a thing of beauty, but it seemed like J.P. Losman to the defender was a lot more often than J.P. Losman.
I remember you always used to pull up those highlights.
Yeah.
JP throwing the bombs on the Jets.
I would love you if you could pull up the Texans game with J.P. Losman. I think it was in 2005. You got to see that game. You would have thought
this one right here.
You would have thought that you had Brett Favre, Kyle, on your roster.
And where was he particularly bad? Like, was he one of those guys like we had Matt Waldman on talking about, like, you know,
short, intermediate? I mean, his career got started off on the wrong foot, or I should say the wrong leg. He broke his leg his rookie year.
Was he a guy that had really bad pocket presence? Like we were talking with Matt before about how
they had a bad offensive line, but besides, it wasn't the pocket presence. He had a good mobility. He just was a terrible decision maker, and he couldn't throw. He could throw over 40 yards, but he couldn't anything below that. He couldn't throw to.
Yeah.
Anyway, J.P. Losman, if we could play some of these. Oh, there's a Chris Kelsey, Kyle, another AFC star like that. Ralph Wilson liked these lunch pail guys. Willis McGahee right there.
Aaron Schobel.
That
was the best when he received that one award. Gave that nice speech.
Oh,
Who's 71 catching this ball?
That is Jason Peters, Kyle.
Wow. And he was a tight end in college, right?
Arkansas, yes, a 330-pound tight end. There's Aaron Schobel right there. All right.
All
right. Beautiful. Those were the days, Kyle. All right. Anyway, number 8, Kyle. We're 3 for 3, Kyle.
Jeez.
We got to play it. We got to play Mr. Aaron Maben, Kyle.
Again?
Aaron Maben. I think we got that wrong, Kyle.
Wait, so you mean to tell me that he is actually higher on the list than we thought last week?
I think we did. Yeah, I think we got that. We got to find out who we made a mistake on now.
I'm gonna have to go through my list, and I know you had sent me that your list a little while back. Let me scroll up. The heck is it? So yeah, let's see. Maben.
Yeah, we have number 8 is Aaron Maben, without a doubt, Kyle. And I kind of felt like last week we read that wrong because I knew that he wasn't.
Yeah, you do have him at number 8. That is for sure. Wow.
I'm trying to think who we missed with him.
Well, let's look at the guys that you had in that 11 to 15 or 11 to 16 range.
So we had Jawan James. We had Jawan James, Dwayne Robertson. We had Lawrence Maroney. Number 13 was E.J. Manuel. 12, Big Mike Williams. 11, Kyle Wilson. I don't know where Aaron Maben came into.
Did we just happen to bring him up? And
I think we were talking about, you know what, Kyle? I think we were talking about Deion Jordan, and then his name got brought up.
How about that? Well, he's so much of a bust that you get to hear his song twice.
Oh, let's hear it. I mean, now keep in mind, there might be some copyright infringements when we play this song. I love it. I love that they say bad quality.
That O-line can't save him.
All right.
They try to make that rhyme with Maben or Mayhem. Wow.
Yeah. Well, anyway, Kyle, moving along. This is a name I'm not too familiar with. This is actually a rare appearance. So we have 3 Buffalo Bills. Now we bring to you the New England Patriots. This is one of 3 that made our list. Andy Katzenmeyer. He was an outside linebacker.
Who is that?
1990 draft, Kyle. Pull up his profile. 1999 draft, 28th overall. I mean, Kyle, I can't tell you too much about this guy, but all I know is his career was short.
It looks like he's got a mugshot too. That's never good. Never a good sign.
Yeah, so Andy Katzenmeyer is
out of the Ohio State University.
The Ohio State. His career lasted from 1999 to 2001. An impressive 24 games, 14 started, 101 tackles, 3.5 sacks, and 1 interception. Kyle, some people get these stats in less than 1 season.
Wow. And this guy was a consensus All-American and the Dick Butkus Award winner. Jack Lambert Trophy.
Jack Lambert, I mean, highly decorated guy. And he went out a champion, Kyle.
Super Bowl champion. How about that?
Super Bowl champion.
Although I don't really think he played a big role on that team.
I don't think so either. I think that Mr. Willie McGinnis and Mike Vrabel have something to say about that.
Yeah, just go back and watch that Patriots Super Bowl. Watch Willie McGinnis beating up on Marshall Faulk.
Yeah,
Melvin was liking that. Melvin hates Marshall Faulk.
Yeah, there's a lot of people. Who does Melvin like? That's a better question. All right. Anyway, moving along, Kyle. We're going edge defender once again. So we got 3 edge defenders that made this next countdown.
You want a good edge defender, you got to select them early. And sometimes when you're wrong, it is a bust.
This guy was a top 10 pick. I'm going to take you to the 2008 draft. And Kyle, we're staying with the University of Ohio State, OSU. One of your favorite guys, a guy that you were super high on coming out of college. I mean, did you have his jersey, if I'm not mistaken?
No.
All right. Anyway, Mr. Vernon Golston, the Combine Warrior.
Let's go and pull up the Combine numbers. Vernon Golston, Ohio State, 2008. Look at that bench press, Gary. Look at those benched. 37 reps. You can't even get 37 reps at 225.
4.65, Kyle, 35.5-inch vertical broad jump of 125. I mean, the measurables are there. But, Kyle, one thing you and I always point out about Vernon Golston, the scouts were talking about him, that he was going to be a good player. And the Combine indicated that he's a freak athlete. But the tape on Ohio State was never all that impressive.
Yes. And you know what was impressive, though, was the stat line. He did have that last year. He had a lot of sacks. But those can be misleading sometimes. Like when we think about Andre Branch, right? Andre Branch was the beneficiary of Cameron Wake and Ndamukong Suh, right? So don't get it twisted. Calvin Pace had 10 sacks a couple years ago. That same season, we know what's interesting enough is Cam Wake that same season had 8.5 sacks. Can we really say that Calvin Pace is a better pass rusher than Cameron Wake just because he had 1.5 more sacks? Not at all. Sometimes they can be misleading. So what are the context of those sacks? So Vernon Golston was a guy who had good measurables, came from a highly touted program, and he had the numbers, at least that last year, to back it up. But when you look at the tape and the context, not so much. And certainly this guy didn't even record a single sack in his entire NFL career. Not one. Not one.
The most surprising thing that I think he was picked up by Chicago after he left the Jets. If I'm not mistaken.
Cincinnati. Marvin Lewis.
It wasn't Chicago. You sure?
Maybe they picked him up after, but I'm pretty sure Cincinnati. Let's look.
Let's look it up. Vernon Golston.
I remember the day after they drafted him, you saw like a big spread in the newspaper, and it was like him with like his shirt off and like pointing to all his measurables. And
Chicago, I'm telling you.
all right, it was Chicago.
All right. Anyway.
And St. Louis apparently too.
Yeah, but there's an asterisk right after those. That means he probably didn't make the team. Kyle, impressive 42 tackles. I mean, stats like that do not go unnoticed on this show.
You know you're really bad when you're such a high pick, a premium defensive player pick, and you can't even get on the field. And there's like other guys that are young. Like you had mentioned McCargo.
It was a weird thing because Kyle, he was drafted and then a whole new regime took over the year after.
Yeah, Rex Ryan wanted nothing to do with it. And Vernon Golston, he tried to make it work. You know, he came to Rex saying, hey, listen, man, you know, I love playing with my hand in the dirt, man. That's where I was successful. Put me with my hand in the dirt, and I'll take a pay cut. Took the pay cut. The Jets were willing to do that. Tried to put him the hand in the dirt. Nothing,
yeah. It was never really a Rex guy, and Kyle, he had a hard time staying healthy too.
Yeah,
just a major bust. I'm just wondering right now, do we just go to the rest of the list, or we just save it?
No, we got to save it.
All right, we're saving it.
And think about it. The 6th overall pick, the Jets have something for that. That Vernon Golston and Leonard Williams, and now they have it again this year. So something about the Jets in that 6th overall pick.
I mean, that's nothing to brag about, Kyle. That's pretty bad.
It's very bad. You're picking in the top 6. Shame on you. But the annoying thing about it, if you're a fan, is it's like, well, it's still not a top 2 pick. You know, like what if I wanted to get this elite quarterback? Like, you know, everyone's talking up Sam Darnold. Like, well, if Darnold's as good as everyone's saying he's going to be, he's going top. He's going to
you know what
top
the Jets need to do? They need to play Hackenberg. That's the key right there. Or Petty.
To that point, I agree. Just don't know if Darnold's going to be that good. Anyway, let's close this baby out. You are on Twitter, AFC_EastBro Gary, AFC Eastbros for me. Email the show, AFCEastBros@gmail.com. We got some lovely email. Not going to repeat it on air. Last week it was pretty funny. Made me laugh. And what else? I think that's it. Matt Waldman. Go and check it. Oh, and by the way, Matt Waldman, I meant to mention this earlier. He had Jamal Williams on, in which Jamal Williams came on to Matt Waldman's show and broke down film with Matt. That's pretty cool. Matt Waldman also has a couple other cool guys coming on, like Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson's coming on to break down film with Matt Waldman on his show. That's pretty cool. So
apparently, I don't know if you heard that Nick Babylove is going to try to hook us up with MC Hammer. So
I caught the tail end of that.
Listeners, tune into a future episode, the AFC East Bros with MC Hammer. That's a first, Kyle, on a football show.
As far as I know, yes. It'd be interesting. All right. So thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.